The orders came in quietly, almost too quietly for a mission that was supposed to be routine. It was late autumn in West Virginia, 1967. The nights grew long, the mist rose from the rivers, and the bridges stood like silent skeletons above the black water. The men of the 104th Infantry were restless. They weren't fresh recruits. Most of them had seen combat overseas, and yet there was something about this particular assignment that set their nerves on edge. The briefing officer hadn't given much detail, only that local reports described strange disturbances near the Silver Bridge, and the army wanted a small patrol to investigate. Disturbances, Corporal Jensen muttered under his breath while they packed their gear. Sounds like we're being sent to chase drunks and kids again. But Captain Morris didn't laugh. He'd read the reports in silence. People talked about a figure with wings, red eyes, and a body that could block out the moonlight. It sounded absurd, but the fear in the locals' words had been undeniable. Routine or not, Morris said, checking his rifle. We move at 1900 hours. Stay sharp. The truck ride out was longer than expected. Trees blurred past, their naked branches scratching against the metal like fingers. The soldiers sat in silence, the hum of the engine filling the void where jokes usually lived. Private Daniels, the youngest of them, kept glancing out the window. He'd grown up in Ohio, not too far from here, and he'd heard the whispers before. They say it's called the Mothman, Daniels finally spoke, voice breaking the tension. A local legend. Appears before disasters. Jensen rolled his eyes. Great. So we're hunting a moth. Someone get me a flashlight. The men chuckled lightly, but their laughter didn't last. The truck slowed as they approached the bridge. From a distance, the Silver Bridge was a dark outline against the mist, its steel arches fading into the fog that rolled in thick waves over the Ohio River. The driver cut the headlights. The world plunged into dim gray. They disembarked quietly, boots crunching against gravel. The air smelled of damp leaves and rusted iron. The river below groaned as the current pushed against the bridge supports. It was a living sound, deep and constant, as though the water itself was restless. Set perimeter, Morris ordered. Daniels, Miller, north side. Jensen, Clark, check under the support beams. Rest of you stay on me. The squad moved into the mist. Flashlights flickered to life, thin cones of light cutting through the darkness. Their beams revealed little except for drifting fog and the skeletal framework of the bridge. Private Miller stopped suddenly. You hear that? He whispered. The men froze. For a moment there was nothing, only the wind brushing across the steel cables. Then faintly, a sound rose, a low hum, like the vibration of wings. Could be the wind, Clark muttered, though his voice shook. They pushed forward. The fog thickened around them, swallowing the night sky. Even the moonlight seemed dim, as though it couldn't break through. The bridge loomed above, its cables stretching endlessly into shadow. Daniels lagged a step behind, gripping his rifle tighter. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching. His heart thudded against his chest, every breath catching in his throat. He glanced up, and for a fraction of a second, he swore he saw two glowing red dots high above the steel framework, like eyes staring directly at him. Captain, Daniels hissed, something's up there. But when the squad raised their flashlights, the lights revealed only fog. Morris clenched his jaw. Stay focused. No ghost stories. Keep moving. Under the bridge, it was colder. Their breath fogged instantly in front of their faces. The metal beams groaned with the weight of time, echoing softly like distant voices. Clark brushed his hand against a girder. It was slick with condensation. "Feels like a tomb down here," he muttered. Suddenly a scream pierced the night. Not human, not animal. A shrill metallic shriek that rattled their bones and seemed to come from everywhere at once. The men spun around, rifles raised. Flashlights whipped across the beams. "Contact!" Jensen barked, but there was nothing. Only the fading echo of that scream dissolving into the mist. Morris steadied his rifle, voice low and hard. "Stay tight." Eyes sharp, the patrol regrouped on the main span of the bridge. The silence afterward was heavier than before, pressing down like a physical weight. Private Daniel's hands wouldn't stop shaking. He knew he had seen something. Not a shadow, not a trick of the fog. Eyes, red, glowing, unblinking eyes. But he stayed quiet. He didn't want the others to laugh. He didn't want to sound weak. The squad moved forward another 100 yards before they found it. A massive set of claw marks scratched deep into one of the steel supports. The grooves were long, jagged, and impossibly high, far above where any man could reach without equipment. The men stared in silence. "Hell of a prank," Jensen finally said, though his voice betrayed his fear. "No," Morris muttered, reaching out to trace the marks. His gloved hand shook. "This isn't a prank." The river groaned again beneath them. The fog seemed to thicken, swallowing even their flashlights. And then, from high above the bridge, they heard it again. That fluttering hum. Closer this time. The men raised their rifles, scanning the steel arches. Something moved. Not the wind, not the fog. Something massive, dark, and winged shifted against the night sky, blocking out what little moonlight remained. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. He wanted to scream, but no sound came out. The figure unfolded itself slowly, wings stretching wide, as though the bridge itself had grown alive. And then, in the center of that monstrous silhouette, two glowing red eyes opened. Watching them, the silence after those eyes appeared was unbearable. No one moved. No one even dared breathe too loud. Every man's heartbeat seemed to echo across the steel, pounding louder than their boots ever could. Private Daniels gripped his rifle so tight, his knuckles turned white. He had been certain he'd imagined it at first, until the others froze with him, their eyes locked upward, staring into the thick fog where that shadow had stretched itself wide. Then, without warning, it vanished. The massive figure melted back into the mist, wings folding silently into the dark. 1 second it was there, red eyes glowing like burning coals. The next, it was gone, swallowed by fog so dense it seemed alive. Jensen was the first to whisper, "What the hell was that?" "Eyes up." "Stay steady," Morris hissed. His voice was calm, but his jaw was tight, the barrel of his rifle rising toward the bridge cables above. They swept the flashlights back and forth, but the beams only revealed a haze of white vapor and rusting steel. The night swallowed everything else. The squad pushed forward cautiously. Boots clanged against the bridge deck, every step echoing like a drumbeat. Daniels kept glancing behind him, convinced that if he didn't, something would swoop down and take him. The fog shifted strangely now. It didn't drift like normal mist. It rolled and curled, as if pulled by unseen hands. Sometimes the beams of their flashlights caught movement, only for the shadows to fade when they turned their rifles toward it. The hum returned. Faint at first, a vibration just at the edge of hearing, then louder, growing until it wasn't just sound anymore. It was in their bones. A low-frequency rumble, like enormous wings cutting through the air far above. Clark stopped dead in his tracks. "I don't like this." "Captain, whatever's up there isn't..." Before he could finish, something heavy slammed against the steel beam above them. The bridge groaned. Bolts rattled loose and clattered to the deck. The squad instinctively raised their rifles. "Contact, topside," Jensen roared. Flashlights swung upward, beams slicing through the mist. For an instant, just an instant, they saw it again, the figure clinging to the steel like some giant insect, wings wrapped tight around its body. Its eyes glowed against the fog, burning red, unblinking. And then, with a single motion, it unfolded. The creature leapt across the span of the bridge, a blur of black cutting through the night. The wind from its wings hit the soldiers like a physical force, almost knocking them off balance. Their flashlights flickered. Radios hissed with static. "Move!" Morris barked. "Defensive line now!" The men formed up, rifles aimed outward. Their breaths came fast, clouding the air in front of their faces. But nothing came. The bridge was silent again, save for the soft creak of steel shifting under its own weight. Daniels could feel the sweat dripping down his back beneath his uniform, cold as ice. He swallowed hard, trying to steady his voice. "Sir, did you see it? Tell me you saw it." Nobody answered. The squad didn't want to admit what they'd witnessed. Soldiers were supposed to face men, bullets, mortar fire, not things that could vanish into the fog with a single beat of their wings. "Eyes up," Morris ordered, his tone sharper now, almost desperate. "We hold position until sunrise." The hours dragged on. They set up a small perimeter on the center span of the bridge, rifles covering every angle, flashlights scanning the fog in constant sweeps. But the fog was endless. It rolled thicker, swallowing even their closest comrades until sometimes only a silhouette was visible. At one point, Daniel swore he heard whispers, low voices, muttering just beyond the edge of hearing. He swung his rifle around, flashlight beam cutting the mist, but there was no one there. Only the sound of the river churning below, restless and eternal. Then came the wings. This time, there was no mistaking them. Heavy, deliberate beats, like leather sails tearing through the night air. They came from above, then behind, then everywhere at once. Jensen fired. A short panic burst into the fog. The shots echoed like thunder across the valley, ricocheting off steel and water. "Cease fire," Morris barked, but it was too late. The silence afterward was worse than the noise. The creature returned their fire with silence. And then slowly, it revealed itself again. First came the eyes, hovering in the mist above the bridge, glowing red like burning coals suspended in the dark. Then the outline, the vast black wings spread wide, the body crouched low, as though ready to strike. It didn't move. It just stared. Seconds stretched into eternity. The men's arms shook as they held their rifles trained on it, fingers hovering on triggers. Daniels felt his chest tighten. His mind screamed at him to shoot, but something deeper whispered not to. It was like staring into a predator's gaze. One wrong move, and it would end. Finally, the creature shifted. Its wings unfolded to their full length, casting a shadow across the entire span. The mist swirled violently, as though pulled toward it. Then, with a deafening screech, it rose higher, climbing into the night sky until the fog swallowed it whole again. The squad collapsed into uneasy silence. "What the hell is this thing?" Clark muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. Nobody answered. They stayed on that bridge all night, every man haunted by the same thought. It wasn't attacking, it was watching. The fog never lifted, the eyes never returned, but the sound of those wings lingered in their heads long after the creature was gone. And when the first light of dawn finally broke over the river, pale and cold, the men realized none of them had slept, not one. Captain Morris gave the order. "We move out. This isn't over." They gathered their gear, but as they prepared to leave the bridge, Daniels glanced once more over the edge. There, carved into the concrete support just above the waterline, were fresh marks. Long, deep grooves that hadn't been there before. It hadn't just been circling. It had been down there too, watching, waiting. The sun never truly warmed the silver bridge. Even in daylight, the mist clung to the steel like a shroud, and the water below churned dark and restless. Captain Morris didn't call for reinforcements. He didn't request air support, didn't even radio in the events of the night. The radios had been unreliable anyway. Bursts of static, distorted voices, signals cutting out entirely whenever the creature appeared. But truthfully, Morris knew the reason. If he told his superiors what they'd seen, they wouldn't believe him. They'd call it nerves, fatigue, hysteria, men cracking under pressure. So instead, he told his squad, "We go back tonight. We confirm what's up there, and then we end it." No one argued, but no one looked relieved either. By the time night fell again, the men were already exhausted. None of them had slept since their first sighting. The tension had drained them, made every sound sharper, every shadow darker. Daniels walked with his eyes down, clutching his rifle like a lifeline. He couldn't erase the image of those red eyes from his mind. Whenever he blinked, they hovered behind his eyelids, unblinking, watching. The patrol moved slowly across the bridge, flashlights cutting thin beams through the fog. The river below was invisible now, though its voice was louder than ever, the water slamming against the supports like fists. Clark muttered under his breath, "Feels like walking into a grave." It started the same way, the hum. Low at first, like a vibration in their boots, then building, louder, until the bridge itself seemed to tremble. "Positions," Morris ordered, his voice a harsh whisper. The squad spread out, rifles raised. The hum grew into a pulse, beating in rhythm with their hearts. And then, from the far end of the bridge, they saw movement. A shadow, larger than any bird, darker than the fog, unfolding against the steel. The red eyes burned first, locking onto them with surgical precision. Then came the wings, stretching outward, filling the air with the thunder of their motion. This time, it didn't vanish. This time, it came straight for them. The men opened fire. Gunfire cracked across the bridge, muzzle flashes lighting the mist like lightning. Bullets ripped into the fog, sparks bouncing off steel. The noise was deafening. But the creature didn't fall. It swooped low, a black mass cutting through their line. The wind from its wings slamming into them like a hurricane. Daniels was thrown off his feet, his helmet clattering against the deck. He scrambled, panicked, searching for his rifle as the others kept firing. "Hold the line," Morris shouted. But the line was breaking. Clark screamed as the creature passed directly over him, a blur of wings and eyes. His flashlight exploded in his hand, the bulb shattering in a spray of glass. When he looked back up, His face was pale as ash. "It's not bleeding," he cried. "We hit it. I swear we hit it." The Mothman circled once, shrieking, a sound that rattled the bolts of the bridge. Then it dove again. Jensen fired upward, shouting curses, but the creature moved impossibly fast. It twisted midair, landed against the side of a steel beam, and clung there like a spider, its claws digging deep into the metal. And then it just stared. Those eyes burned into them, not like an animal, not like prey or predator. It was something else, intelligent, calculating. Daniels finally found his rifle and lifted it, finger trembling on the trigger. But he couldn't fire. The longer he stared into those eyes, the heavier his body felt, like invisible chains were dragging him down. He could hear something too. Not words exactly, but whispers curling inside his head, filling his mind with static. Memories, fears, thoughts he didn't want. His mother's voice calling his name. The sound of men screaming in war zones, the echo of death. "No, no," he whispered, clutching his helmet. "Daniels?" "Stay with us," Morris barked, dragging him back by the collar. The spell broke. Daniels gasped, sucking in air like he'd been drowning. But when he looked back at the beam, the creature was gone. The squad regrouped, frantic. The fog swirled violently now, wrapping around them as though the bridge itself was collapsing into another world. Morris raised his radio, voice sharp. "Command, this is Fox 2. Do you copy?" Over only static answered. Then, beneath the static, a low voice whispered back. Not a soldier, not human. "Leave!" The radio screeched and died in his hand. The squad fell silent. And then the creature came again. This time, it didn't just pass overhead. It struck. Clark barely had time to scream before the Mothman's claws wrapped around him. One moment he was there, rifle raised, flashlight cutting through the mist. The next, he was lifted into the air, his scream echoing as the wings carried him into the night sky. "Clark!" Daniels shouted, rushing forward, but Morris grabbed him, yanking him back. Gunfire erupted again, but it was useless. The beams of their flashlights caught only a blur of wings and the faint outline of Clark's body thrashing against the claws before both disappeared into the fog above. The bridge shook violently, bolts rattling loose, as though mocking their helplessness. And then there was silence again. Only the river's endless groan, and four men staring at the empty sky where their comrade had been. Daniels fell to his knees, his body trembling. "He's gone," he whispered. "God, he's just gone." Morris forced his men into a circle, rifles outward, flashlights covering every angle. His voice was iron, but his eyes betrayed the truth, fear, sharp and raw. "This isn't random," Morris said. "It's not attacking all of us. It's choosing." No one replied. They didn't want to believe him, but in the heavy silence that followed, each man felt the same truth sinking in. They weren't hunters anymore. They were prey. The bridge groaned under the weight of silence. Clark was gone, lifted into the fog, his scream fading into the night like a soul dragged into another world. The squad stood frozen, rifles trembling in their hands, eyes darting skyward in desperate search of their missing brother. But the sky gave nothing back, just fog, endless choking fog. Captain Morris's jaw was tight, his voice a low growl. "We don't break. We hold this ground." Yet even he couldn't disguise the fear in his eyes. Everyone felt it now. They were no longer in control. The hum started again. Stronger this time. The deck of the silver bridge trembled under their boots. vibrations running up through the steel into their bones. Private Daniels felt it in his teeth, a sickening buzz that set his nerves on fire. He wanted to cover his ears, but the sound wasn't just around them. It was inside them. Then came the shadows. Huge, sweeping shapes that cut through the fog above their heads, blotting out even the dim moonlight. Flashlights caught glimpses, wings stretching wider than a truck, claws scraping across steel beams, and those burning red eyes weaving in and out of the mist. "It's circling us," Jensen muttered, his voice cracking. "It's playing with us." No one argued. The creature struck without warning. A black mass dropped from the sky, slamming into the deck with a force that made the entire bridge shudder. Metal screamed. Bolts rained down like falling hail. The men opened fire instantly. Muzzle flashes lit the mist, bullets sparking against steel, but none of it stopped the thing. It unfolded its wings, towering over them. An impossible shape of feathers, claws, and glowing eyes. The light of their flashlights seemed to bend around its body, refusing to reveal its full form. Daniels froze, paralyzed. It wasn't just looking at them. It was inside them, its gaze peeling back every layer of fear and memory, leaving them bare. He felt his knees weaken, his breath vanish. "Daniels, move!" Morris bellowed, shoving him aside just as the creature lunged. Its claws raked across the deck, gouging deep scars into the steel where Daniels had stood a second before. Sparks erupted, the smell of burning metal filling the air. Miller screamed. The Mothman whipped its wings outward, and the force knocked Miller off his feet. His rifle clattered across the bridge, spinning into the fog. He crawled backward, gasping, flashlight beam shaking wildly. The light caught the creature's face, pale, stretched, human and not human all at once. Its mouth opened, revealing no teeth, no tongue, just a dark void that sucked in the air around it. Then came the scream, a shrill metallic screech that ripped through their skulls. The sound wasn't just heard, it was felt, vibrating through every bone, every nerve. Miller clutched his head, blood seeping from his ears. "Stop it! God, make it stop!" The creature swooped forward and seized him. One claw wrapped around his torso, lifting him like a child's toy. Miller fired his pistol wildly, shots vanishing into the fog, until the weapon clicked empty. His scream was the last thing they heard before the wings carried him into the black sky. The squad was down to 4. Jensen, face pale, screamed after him, "You son of a bitch!" He raised his rifle, emptied the entire magazine into the mist, voice cracking with rage. The bullets vanished into the night. No blood, no cry, nothing. The fog thickened, curling around them, smothering the sound of the river below. Then the whispering started. Voices, dozens of them. Men, women, children, screams, cries, laughter. The sound came from everywhere, swirling in their ears, overlapping until it was unbearable. Daniels dropped his rifle, clapping his hands over his head. "No, no, get out of my head." Jensen grabbed him by the shoulders. "It's not real. Focus." But deep down, Jensen wasn't sure if he believed his own words. A shadow fell over them. The Mothman landed again, closer this time, crouched against the bridge deck. Its wings spread wide, wrapping around them like walls. The men were trapped inside a cage of black feathers and claws, flashlights flickering weakly as though the batteries were being drained by its presence. The eyes opened again, 2 burning coals inches from their faces. Captain Morris raised his rifle, voice shaking but defiant. "You don't get us all. Not tonight." He fired point blank into its chest. The creature didn't flinch. Instead, it leaned closer, and for the first time, it spoke. Not through a mouth, not through sound, through their minds. "You were warned." The words were carved directly into their skulls, searing hot, undeniable. Every man staggered back, clutching his head, as though the voice had branded itself into their very bones. And then, just as suddenly, the creature vanished. Silence. The wings, the hum, the whispers, all gone. The bridge groaned under their boots, but otherwise, the world was still. Jensen collapsed against the railing, panting. What the hell does that mean? Warned of what? No one answered. Daniels wiped the blood from his ears, his body trembling. He wanted to scream, to run, but his legs wouldn't move. Morris lowered his rifle slowly, his face hard but pale. "We're not leaving. Not until we find out what it wants." The others stared at him in disbelief, but even as the words left his mouth, the fog shifted again. And somewhere far above them, the wings began to beat once more. The wings returned, slow, heavy, deliberate. Each beat shook the bridge like a giant's footsteps. Each gust of wind slicing through the fog and rattling the steel cables. Captain Morris tightened his grip on his rifle. Only 3 men stood beside him now. Daniels, Jensen, and himself. Miller and Clark were gone, swallowed by the night. Their screams still lingered in the mist like echoes that refused to fade. No one spoke. They were past fear now. Fear had burned away into something colder. Resignation. The fog swirled violently, twisting into unnatural shapes. At times, it looked like faces, distorted, stretched, screaming silently. The men forced themselves to look away, but the images lingered in their minds. Daniels's voice finally cracked the silence. "Captain, we can't fight this thing. It's not meant to be fought." Morris turned sharply, eyes fierce. "We're soldiers. We don't run. Not from this. Not from anything." But even as he said it, his voice shook. The hum grew louder, rattling the steel beneath their boots. The river below churned like a storm, waves slamming against the supports as if the water itself feared what was above. Then it appeared. The Mothman descended slowly, wings spread wide, eyes burning through the fog. It didn't attack this time. It hovered just above the bridge, its presence filling the air with a suffocating weight. The men raised their rifles, but their fingers hesitated on the triggers. The creature wasn't moving. It was watching, waiting. And then, in their minds, the voice came again. "The bridge will fall." The words slammed into them like a hammer, sharp and absolute. Daniel staggered back, shaking his head violently. "No, no, you're lying, you're lying." But deep down, none of them believed it was a lie. Jensen cursed, slamming a fresh magazine into his rifle. "Then we bring it down before it brings us down." He fired, the deafening cracks echoing through the fog. Bullets tore into the night, but the creature remained untouched, unbothered. Its eyes glowed brighter, pulsing like a heartbeat, and then it screamed. The sound wasn't just loud, it was catastrophic. The steel beams groaned, cables whipped violently, and bolts tore loose, raining sparks down onto the deck. The entire silver bridge trembled, as if the very structure had heard the creature's prophecy and was preparing to obey. The men dropped to their knees, hands over their ears, blood seeping from their noses as the shriek burrowed into their skulls. When the sound finally stopped, Jensen collapsed to the ground, unmoving. His eyes were open, his face frozen in terror, but his chest didn't rise. Daniels crawled to him, shaking his shoulder desperately. Jensen! Jensen, get up, please. Nothing. He was gone. The squad was down to 2. Morris and Daniels stood side by side, rifles trembling, hearts pounding. The Mothman hovered above them, its wings stretching wide until it seemed larger than the bridge itself. The fog wrapped around its body like a cloak, its eyes burning brighter and brighter until the light blinded them. And then, in their minds, the voice returned. One final time. You were warned. The air cracked like thunder. The creature rose higher, wings slicing through the night, and then it was gone. The fog thinned slightly, revealing the pale glow of dawn creeping across the horizon. The bridge stood silent. For now. Days later, Captain Morris sat alone in a military debriefing room. Daniels hadn't made it back with him. Vanished somewhere in the fog on their retreat. Morris never saw him again. The officers across the table asked their questions, scribbled their notes. Unidentified enemy? Possible insurgent activity? Mass hysteria? Morris gave no answers. What could he say? That a creature with wings larger than a truck, eyes like burning coals, and a voice that spoke inside your skull had hunted his men? That it had predicted disaster? That it had warned them? Number. He stayed silent, but inside, the words replayed over and over. The bridge will fall. On December 15th, 1967, just weeks after his patrol, the Silver Bridge collapsed during rush hour traffic. Dozens of cars plunged into the icy waters of the Ohio River. 46 people died. Survivors claimed they'd seen a dark figure with wings near the bridge in the days leading up to the disaster. Captain Morris read the headlines in silence, his hands trembling. The prophecy had been true. The Mothman hadn't come to kill them all. It had come to warn them. But the price of ignoring that warning had been written in blood and steel. Even now, Morris swears he sees it sometimes, perched on rooftops, watching from tree lines, its eyes glowing faintly in the mist, waiting, not hunting this time, just watching. And always, in the back of his mind, he hears the words, "You were warned."